is what happens when you work to change things. And first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world.
This is what happens when you work to change things. And first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world.
So what do you guys think about the FDA clerks? After us, and they're attacking the work that you guys are doing. Are you ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Fuck you!
Hey everyone, how's everyone doing? I got a lot of comments earlier as I was, I put the thumbnail up and everything, and I said, is anybody talking about what's going on with Elizabeth Holmes? Who knows Elizabeth Holmes? What's if you know who Elizabeth Holmes is, please drop a rabbit on the chat. Shout out to everyone in the chat. I'm seeing it's pretty busy. I'm looking at, yes, I am live from south of the border. No, I haven't been deported yet, so good. Fun to be blonde knows who Elizabeth Holmes is. That's great. If you don't, that's fine. And I'm not going to give you the ins and outs of this woman, okay? But if you guys at least saw a little bit of that clip in the beginning, right? Where she says, first they hate you and then they come after you, just asking a basic question, right? I thought was interesting because it's a very good sign of someone that is deceptive in when you're wanting to know the truth of something, right? If you ask someone a question, very basic question, did you, can you, is it, okay? And they give you a long-winded, inspirational leadership type of question, I would probably raise my eyebrows. And I have 2 of them, so I'd raise both of them. Yeah, so we're going to look into Elizabeth Holmes a little bit, okay? And someone said in the chat, man, she is creepy. Yes. I think, and we'll look into that a little bit, but I think that this is a woman that really tried her best to portray a sense of and or a persona, okay, of something, right? Like think of Steve Jobs, okay? If you guys remember Steve Jobs, who inventor of Apple, right? Really the pioneer of Apple, the story of someone that drops out of college, which is Apple, and makes something very revolutionary, right? Does something very great. And I think why this story of Elizabeth Holmes is so provocative, okay? Number one, she dressed like the man, okay? Steve Jobs had a certain wardrobe about him. If you ever saw him speak, and yes, God is Raven, she was a straight scammer. That's factual. And we'll look into that a little bit. We'll look into the indictment. But Steve Jobs, when you would see Steve Jobs, it was either a tie or maybe a sports jacket or something. And then for the longest time, it was the turtleneck. And so then what she did is she kind of replicated that style, right? I've never known a woman to have, now there's comfort clothes, right? Like you'll have your go-tos, but apparently for her, it wasn't so much about like the style or anything, and neither am I. I just don't think that I would replicate another man's style. It was also said that she used a voice changer. Now, I know we talked about voice changers here and who's using one. We've come up with some crazy conspiracy theories. Yeah, she actually used a voice changer because a professor from the college that she had dropped out of, which was Stanford, said that she had heard her speak again, and suddenly she was a baritone. So she went from a baritone. So it was almost like she wanted to replicate just the mirror image of what she felt like a leader looks like. Um, and somehow the deeper voice totally helped her out as well. It allowed her to move around the way she did. She conned a lot of people, and we're going to look into that. And I'm talking about men that, very rich men that you would think would know better, right, to where they're putting their money and what is happening with their money. She had an obsession over Steve Jobs here and there. You'll see that. And people noticed that about her in the work area. Okay. And guess what? It was a journalist that outed her out. So shout out to that journalist that did that, because I don't think that anybody, even the investors, would know what was going on behind the scenes. Now, if you would think about companies that don't disclose a lot of information, okay? I'm thinking about Lockheed Martin, for example, who we know is a company that does a lot of like the weapons and stuff like that for the United States. What is it? I don't want to say it's arsenal. I forget what it's called, but there's a specific science that they dedicate themselves into. Okay. And a lot of science companies don't really disclose a lot of what they do. That's fine. But if you're investing money to a company, don't you think you would need at least a blueprint of what are the ins and outs? What are you doing? And so we're going to look into that as well. So Elizabeth Holmes, okay, is said to have invented a machine. She called it the Edison, okay? And I had an opportunity, actually. Let me see if I can pull up this document for us. I had the opportunity to look at, to pull the blueprint of the Edison, okay? So there are documents out there where we can actually see, well, what the hell does this look like? Now, I'm not a scientist. I have behavioral science experience, but I'm not like a scientist, like a doctor. I don't, you know what? I slept through biology. I barely got through just because I couldn't do it. It was very boring for me, but I have some level of understanding, right? At the very least, the physics and the anatomy and all that other stuff. Now, all this other science stuff, molecular, all that other stuff, I can't do at all. I don't have the brain for it. I definitely don't have the time for it, and I get bored very easy. And I'm just being honest. Let me see if I can pull up this power slide. All right, I think it's going to let us do it here. Now, ooh, that's not good. Let's try that one more time. Is it blinking for everybody? Stop screen. Try that one more time. I felt like I was having a seizure there. Let's try that one more time and see if it works for us. Here we go. Hopefully everybody can see this Adobe document. So we pulled it, okay? And I'm reading. I'm telling you, I cannot understand anything about it. So Just Jay said, I took my F in chemistry proudly. You know what? I think I got like, I don't know, an H, because I couldn't do it. I could not do it. So shout out and kudos to all the scientists out there. But where I was looking at is the year, right? 2016. There was her company, Theranos. She founded it. There has said to have been this this machine that was going to be revolutionary, that would help people avoid being pricked. Okay, so if you had some disease or whatnot, it was going to help with the checking of blood, and it would be able to detect maybe even things you didn't even know were out there for you. So they were investing into this machine. It was nobody could really get a blueprint of what exactly it did or what it looked like. Okay. And yeah, it's crazy how the damn rich people got fooled. Seriously, you can't even check. You would think that, you would have done a little bit more research, but definitely not. So let's see if I can go to the side. So when you look into this PowerPoint was written by her. She presented it in some medical conference, okay, to try to bring awareness to, again, fishing for more investors for the product, to get a little bit more notoriety. So this little product, nobody had really seen it, okay? And it was literally a machine, And you were trying to understand, well, okay, how is it that this little vial that you would be pricked one time, how is it that that was enough for you to check history of diseases, and not only that, be able to capture and be predictive of what's going to happen to you in the future? When I even looked at her mission, right, is to make actionable health information accessible at the time it matters. And I said, man, that is the most vaguest mission statement that I've ever read. Because if you're talking about a machine that would be able to do that, right, in the testing, this is very vague to me. Very, very vague. Number one, if it's just the machine itself and you were selling it and you wanted to promote it to all these people, and she did a good job for many years, she conned a lot of people from their money by this machine, right? The mission didn't quite even portray what exactly is it that this machine would have done. What studies were out there? There was not enough data to even read it. So I'm going to go, here's the unit, by the way. And let me put this comment down so I can give you guys a little bit of a visual of what this looks like. All right. So you have all this little technologies, basically, okay? This right here is where they would have collected the sample, that sample collection device, the SCD, okay? The tubes, okay? All this over here is grayed out by her, and I'm not really sure why. And so then they process it in this machine. There's this visual analyzer, and somehow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 magic, you're going to be diagnosed, and they'll know everything that's wrong with you. Everything will be, diagnosed. Okay. Wow. Wonderful. So I'm reading this and I'm like, and this is still garbage and gibberish for me because I don't understand the ins and outs of that. Wanting to know, well, okay, if I definitely don't like needles. I don't know anybody that does. Okay. But this right here is just so advanced. And this was supposed to be their detection system, right? And I'm looking at it, it just looks like a bunch of computer parts. I'm going to be very honest with you. So it was interesting to see this 2016 visual where she presented it. And I just thought, man, I wonder if anybody that maybe wasn't necessarily a scientist had any doubts about, what is going on? And that's right. There should have been patents pending, review. There wasn't any reviews or studies. I'm thinking there's papers out there written. We hold these doctors to a higher standard. Think of it this way. I'm not at all well-versed in medical practices. Okay. But I know a lot about psychological practices. Okay. So I know that there's peer review articles out there. There are things, especially like if you're looking at therapies and stuff like that, that will be under reviewed for many years before they put it into practice. Okay. So I can see that, out there where there's a lot of reviews. But here, I don't even know. Where would I go and search for some of the stuff? I don't know. And if you guys know if I have any medical professionals that know, well, this is how this would go. The thermocycler and the cartridge, I'm thinking, okay, is that for ink for a printer? What does this look like? And here's this sample of the processing machine. Look at that. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, it looks like a damn refrigerator, right? So the idea was this. Okay, and I'm going to use Walgreens as an example because Walgreens was one of their investors, and they had a huge deal that fell out. Okay, Walgreens would take one of these units to their store. You can go get your, finger pricked. Okay, well, what was happening is that sometimes they would send them to go get their testing done, and some of these things weren't even working. Okay, or they weren't even using them. It turns out, well, we can't use it. It's out of order, or the machine's not, working, or whatever. They weren't even pricking them with the machine, which is supposed to stop the, the painful pricking of needles and vials of blood. It was just supposed to be a little tube, right? They weren't out there. They weren't out there on time. It was just a blueprint for the longest time. Okay. And then we had some whistleblowers from the inside of the company that started talking about how they had to test themselves, okay, or they had to test like other subjects. So if you had to test for syphilis, certain infectious diseases that you probably don't just want other companies doing it on their own. So little things like that. Sometimes vials would be mixed up. It just became so unsanitary in general. Okay. And the inspections would come. They were kind of like, being fishy about the inspections. They didn't pass once. So it was always kind of a hit and miss with the situation. Oh, look at this. Barbie says, my hubby is a microbiologist, DVM research scientist. He approves others' research projects for the government for ethics and feasibility. Private sector is sketchy. Yeah, right? So this was a private sector company, okay? And they were working really, really hard to get the FDA approval. I believe they got like the FDA approval on one thing, and then it kind of fell through later on because they came in there. And this is, again, because a journalist called them out. So people would get tested, all right? They got tested with this machine. And then their testing would be off. Like some people thought they had cancer, all right? And would sit there thinking they had cancer for weeks and weeks, and then had to go back and get a regular test to find out that it wasn't cancer. But when you have a pregnancy test, for example, right? It's like a false positive. Well, do I have cancer? Do I not have cancer? Are you pregnant? Or are you not pregnant? Very much similar to anything that's a false positive out there. So there was also an incident where somebody thought they had HIV. So it just became one thing after another, and it was just so unsanitary as it pertains to the way this machine was used. Not only that, okay, and let me see if there's anything that would make sense here to kind of show some of the stuff. I'm just like, whoa, this is really like, what happens if you break this thing? And she was showing videos. She was showing how these analyzers were shown. If you go back and just Google, you'll see some of these analyzers were in her office, in the areas at least where she would allow you to see, okay? At least how this information was being portrayed. And I look at this and I'm like, this is garbage. Now I understand blood, okay? HDLs, cholesterols, all that other stuff, how they were able to measure the criteria and performance and all that other stuff. Like I can understand here and there, but some of this, I'm like, this is gibberish. And now you add like some math component here, I'm done. I can't. So why someone like Elizabeth Holmes interests me, okay? And I had actually, and I'll show you guys a little bit of something else that I had watched, and I would recommend, if you have HBO Max, and if you don't, that's okay, because they have the free trial, and you could, it's like 14 days and then you can cancel. They did the documentary, I believe they released it in 2019. Yep, it was called The Inventor, okay? And this documentary, I mean, I was like, whoa, for me, I don't really, rarely do I co-sign documentaries because I feel like there's always just kind of a one-sided area. But I think that this is one that HBO actually did a really good job on. They portrayed her as, they portrayed her as who she is. How do we see leadership in companies? How do we see people that are taking up those bigger roles? And then I also thought was interesting was what happened with the company, where they became so secluded behaviorally. I mean, you hear people say that they were watching, they had like some technology in the computer where they can actually find out who you're typing or who you're messaging. So they became very like in close. This groupthink mentality was very much there. And in addition to that, you had Elizabeth, who was also dating the other founder, right? The other, investor. So that became a bit of a conflict of interest. But this is the private sector. I guess you can do that. Whatever. They would go on trips together. It was a weird situation. And then at the same time, when you look at her and you actually watch her speak, I wonder if she ever blinked. I was trying to count the many times the woman would blink, because, and not to make fun, but she really, I don't know if that's the way she wanted to, if she's able to, if she portrays herself like that on purpose. What is it about blinking? Is there a sign of weakness if you blink? I'm kind of curious, and I mean that very respectfully. I don't know if that's like a health condition of hers or whatnot. Let me show you guys something else. We're going to look at this indictment that we have, okay? And I'm going to show you another thing as well, which is the jury selection. The questions that they use for this jury pool were also very interesting, okay? Let's see if I can share my screen one more time. Let's see. So let's look at this. Let's see. All righty. So here we have, oh, I should probably zoom in. And of course, very lengthy, okay? We're going to go to paragraph 3. And this is what the indictment alleges. This is what they're being accused of. That Holmes and Balwani, and you'll hear the name Sunny Balwani. Sunny Balwani is, those are the two leaders of this company, okay? They're alleging that they defrauded doctors and patients by making false claims concerning Theranos' ability to provide accurate, fast, reliable, and cheap blood tests and test results, and by omitting information concerning the limits of and problems by Theranos technology. The defendants knew Theranos was not capable of consistently producing accurate and reliable results for certain blood tests, including calcium, chloride, potassium, HIV, all these scientific words. I'm not even going to go into it. Sodium. The defendants nevertheless use interstate electronic wires to purchase advertisement intended to induce individuals to purchase Theranos blood tests at Walgreens stores in California and Arizona. Okay. Through these advertisements, the defendant represented to individuals that Theranos blood tests were cheaper than blood tests from conventional laboratories to induce individuals to purchase Theranos blood tests. So their competitor, who's the other people that for me, I could tell you, I think it's like what, Diagnostic Quest or something like that. That's the name of the company. Think of all the people that can take blood, okay? Where you go, your insurance might send you to go check them out or whatever, get a blood test, get a blood prick. They were trying to compete with those bigger companies, okay? They were really trying to compete with those bigger companies and wanted to make sure that they, were on top. Hence why you see that video that we just saw. And if you watch the documentary, and again, you can watch it on HBO, free trial, 14 days, I think, if you don't have it. And then you can, cancel at any time. The Inventor is the name of it. So there was a recording insider in the company, Quest Diagnostics. Thank you, Articulate. I'm like, who is it? Quest Diagnostics, something like that. That was their competitor. And they get on here and somebody leaks a video on that, staff meeting where they said, F you, Quest Diagnostics. They consider them their haters and their, opposites. And they were also kind of challenging some of the things that they were saying in the public media, which is interesting. So putting that out there, I think the other side to this too, just the misrepresentation, right? For everyone that was investing money. And we're going to look at those investors here in a minute. But read the indictment, look at it, and see kind of what your thoughts are. I mean, I honestly think whatever the feds have for these people, it must be big, okay? I don't think that it's anything that they would just put all their, resources to at all. I think that they have something here against them. And she could be facing, I think, up to 10 years, if I remember reading what it looks like. Okay, so this is not a joke at all for them. And Elizabeth Holmes just had a child as well. So this is going to be a big thing. I mean, the lady became broke. So these were all their investors. Okay, we see the Walmart people up there. Okay, Fox News Corp, the education secretary, media telecommunications for automotives, media investors, Greek shipping, ex-beer owners, ex-chairman of the Bell Corp, and estate attorney, as well as the here you have a Patriots owner as well. So there was people that had put money, okay? I don't know what the conditions were, right? That even investors didn't even know what the blueprint of this machine was. Kind of makes you wonder, well, has it worked? Does it work? I don't know. Kind of interesting. And so I'm curious to know what your guys' thoughts are about, first of all, the machine, right? The machine doesn't work. I get it. Okay. But what are your guys' thoughts are about like the potential of there being a machine where, I mean, it would be great if we didn't have to get pricked. I think it's a very good fantasy to have. Who's going to invent it? Are we even there yet to invent something like that? Right? I'm kind of curious to know. And don't all these places have their own teams to investigate before the event? Right. You would think that maybe like Walmart would send a representative out there to test this machine out versus going to a conference where you get like nothing but slides, right? I'm curious to know. But I also kind of wonder, guys, because the people that sat on the board, these investors, they were men. White collar crimes cost less time. That's right. That is so true, Goddess Raven. But I'm kind of curious, like men, did she feel like a baritone voice would have been better for her to, I don't know, measure up to these men? The way she dressed? She had to look like Steve Jobs, really? I don't know. What do you guys think about a potential there being a machine or something to kind of help the situation? I like the idea. I don't know what it would take to get us there, but I think that it puts a lot of people at risk, right? You have this idea that this is going to cost less, and I don't know if it was just a really nice dream to have. Yeah. Do you think she felt? I think she felt exactly that, to be powerful. Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine though? Okay. And I'm thinking about Medicaid, Medicare. Okay. You know, the limit that you have for the, providers that you can go to. Okay. The limit that you have for like you can't just choose your own, you could choose your own doctors. I don't know. It depends the kind that you have and whatnot, but you can't sue them because it's all, you're getting like, through the government, some support. That's the thing. And I don't know if a lot of people know that. If you have Medicaid or Medicare, okay, you can't sue the government for malpractice. Like you can't, it's not going to get anywhere. And if you read through the paperwork, people do a lot of mistakes in the medical field. I believe that this was just something really bad waiting to happen. Who knows how many people were misdiagnosed with diseases? Who knows if anybody was exposed to anything? We really don't have a lot of information. And I think that they're intentionally keeping it quiet, okay? Because I don't think anybody wants to get in trouble. To be quite honest, I don't think anybody wants to get in trouble. I don't think anybody would want to really talk about that, even the government. But let's look at a little quick timeline to kind of help us understand the visual of this situation. Let's see. A timeline. Here we go. Of this little controversy. Let's look at this real quick. Here we go. The rise and fall and pivot of Theranos. Okay. So Theranos gets approved for this fingerprint prick test to diagnose herpes. Okay. An STD. Theranos temporarily halts those tests to wait on further approval. And this was in 2015. Okay. We see that there. And then we have the company starts its East Coast expansion with the deal with Capital Blue Cross to open a Theranos Wellness Center in Pennsylvania. All right. Receives a waiver, and this is July 16, 2015. They receive a waiver that means that the company could run its tests right at the wellness center instead of the traditional clinic labs. Okay. We go to October 2015, a bombshell Wall Street Journal reports questions and the accuracy of a Theranos test. That's when stuff gets really real here. That's when stuff gets real. Yeah. Herpes. Most people have that in their system. Check for something else. You baby Steve Jobs, what the hell? Yes, she was a wannabe Steve Jobs. And honestly, I mean, interesting. You drop out of college, just like he did. But see, at the very least, Steve Jobs had a blueprint of what all this would look like. This girl didn't. Okay. maybe a little picture in the journal. I'm not really sure, and I don't want to kill anybody's dreams, right? But you're talking about people's lives here. That's computer technologies. That's separate. I don't know. Maybe I just feel like we're talking about two different things, right? Anyways, medical technology, maybe they go together to a certain degree. They might meet halfway. So then we have that the FDA claims Theranos is shipping an uncleared medical device. All right, that's October. So busy year for 2015. Then we have November that a reported 350 million partnership with the supermarket chain Safeway falls through. And I thought it was interesting because they're going to the supermarkets. I know supermarkets might have pharmacies, right? That's great. However, I'm waiting for them to go like to a bigger medical, I don't know. Like think of what's that one medical agency that looks like a Walmart? They have everything all in one. Oh my gosh, I forgot the name of it. Kaiser. Okay. I'm thinking they'll go to Kaiser. No, they don't go that route. They go to these little chains right here, and they want to compete against Quest Diagnostics. So then we move on to 2016. Okay. Here it says follow up. Let's see. The Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, which regulate blood testing labs, cite concerns that one of the Theranos labs pose immediate jeopardy to patients. Oh, okay. So that's when stuff gets real here. That's right. So we start seeing some concerns. All right. They start probing just allegations of misleading investors. All of that information starts going to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Stuff gets real. The president and COO, Sunny Balwani, leaves the company. Now, that was her lover. Remember that. Okay. The guy that they were hanging out, they were traveling together. Okay. So he starts leaving. Now, this is the interesting part, just so you guys know what the defense is going to look like for Elizabeth Holmes. Her defense is that she was in an abusive relationship with Sunny, that it was abusive, that she was mistreated. I'm kind of curious to know what evidence they're going to have to present that. And one of the things that they said, okay, failures are mistakes. They're not crimes. That's how the defense is framing this situation. When you had so many people reporting and thinking they had cancer, HIV, maybe herpes, you had people in the agency that had to test themselves. They were testing infectious diseases that they weren't necessarily qualified to do so. It was a lot. It was a lot. So yeah, it was pretty abusive, and it was they had attorneys. Some of the whistleblowers had people follow them. Okay. There was attorneys out there that were threatening them. There was one very big one that represented Weinstein as well. And I forgot his name, but the guy has very abusive tactics, which is part of his MO. To defend Elizabeth and everyone in there. So a lot of people had put money in here. They were trying to hire the best of the best. It sounds so, and really just to give you a conclusion to all this is that they shut down the lab in 2016. So like the last between 2015 and 2016, it was a pretty crazy year for this company. A lot of people start coming out about what was going on, but all it took was a journalist to push the envelope, to say, hey, something's going on here. Hey, this is, I have questions. And he wasn't necessarily a medical background, but he knew to kind of ask the right questions to get, at least something going. Because he felt like that something's not right in this situation. And also just how long are these medical findings going to take you? Is it possible? They started looking into her university years. I mean, they go deep in this lady. And I think what we find is that this lady is, I don't know, it's like the lack of, I don't want to like judge her for her looks. Okay. Don't get me wrong on that. That's not at all what I'm trying to do. Okay. But there's something to be said about the way and let me see if I can share this. Something to be said about the way she kind of portrays herself. What is it about this persona, right? Of trying to be the best, okay, Steve Jobs. Okay, this is probably the most natural I've ever seen her, because prior to that, she had the turtleneck. She's not wearing one right now. When she speaks, she doesn't blink. You have to kind of watch what she's doing. So I don't know. It's crazy. And again, we'll play that video again so you guys can see how she talks. But also, in just asking her a basic question, she alludes or she doesn't really give you an answer. And honestly, that's the answer right there. How do you know if someone's being deceptive? Very simple. Can they answer the question? How do you know if someone's being deceptive? Can they answer the question? Yeah. So, I don't know if it's I want to say a level of narcissism for sure. A level of thinking that she needs to, what's the word? She's deserving of this because Steve Jobs did the same. And I'm sure there'll be another Steve Jobs out there, maybe not in my generation, but where he didn't have to go to college. Okay. It gives us this idea that there's no dream you can't achieve. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I look like an engineer. This was in one of her, Twitter posts. Even then, I'm thinking, who told her that this is how you live? Right? Who told her that this is who you had to be? Right? And I look at her and I'm like, there's something's off. Something's off. And even though she's got those, big blue eyes, it's almost like nothing's there. And again, I'm just kind of giving an assessment of when I'm listening to how she answers questions, she's not answering the question, and there's also nothing there. Yeah. Right. So look what Barb said. She said, she acted in a masculine way because her whole life she was disregarded as a lowly woman with no knowledge. So she dressed familiar to these men to bring their guards down. And I kind of wonder, Barb, if it worked, because you have to think about who was on the board. Who was on that board? It was men. Okay. High-powered men. A lot of them. You got to think about who she was competing against. Okay. And also how, even though a lot of women out there, when they would hear her speak, if you hear her on TED Talks, she sounds very sure of herself and all that other stuff, but the women would kind of, would be very inspired by her. Very inspired that here you have another woman that's achieved these ranks, dropped out of school, just like Steve Jobs, very sure of herself, very confident in a powerhouse with a bunch of men. Okay. Let's put that out there. It's interesting because it makes me wonder how the women were treated. How were the women treated in this situation? What did it look like? I think it might have been a very scary situation. There was an employee, and I cannot remember his name, so don't ask me. He was very much taken back by Holmes and by this whole situation. He committed suicide. Okay. In this situation, he committed suicide. I cannot remember his name, guys, but he was an employee there, and I believe that he had been kind of like disowned by Elizabeth and Barwani and Son, the group, the leadership group. So he commits suicide. This was an employee, and when the agency found out, okay, it was like nothing. They didn't give it, any merit. I mean, it was crazy that they couldn't even respect this man or give him a service or anything. It's kind of sad, that situation. So it wasn't like Elizabeth was not a smart girl. She's a smart person. Don't get me wrong. But I think that it's this entitlement of deserving and then having to play the part. Okay. And then you have the right people, right employees for a certain amount of time where they're in this groupthink mentality. They can't think on their own. and you're cheering on the company and you don't leak out secrets, okay? Definitely not. And so, as much as pricking is, I hate being pricked, okay? I have the smallest veins. Thank you, Ian Gibbons. Ian Gibbons, he died by suicide the night before he was required to testify in a lawsuit about the company's technology. Thank you so much. It talks, baby girl. Yeah. So he committed suicide. I mean, he was very much, and I believe he wanted this to work, but he kept calling out the things that didn't work. And so they kind of like disowned the man, made him feel some type of way. I think they let him go actually, eventually. And then this had an effect on his mental health for sure. So it's very sad to see the lengths that people will go. You know, she drops out of school, okay, and like I said, she got into Stanford, so she's not she was a smart woman, okay. Don't get me wrong, but I think she was a smart woman with more dreams than anything. Her vision was probably bigger than what was actually feasible, what could be done. And I'm not a scientist. I don't know. And I'm kind of curious to know if we have any scientists here, is it possible to replicate? Is it possible to do something like what Elizabeth Holmes wanted to do? You know, a little vial of blood where you don't have to prick yourself, okay? And it's going to give you your history and it'll prevent you from all these diseases, or at least, you know, detecting them, you know, so you can get tested and treatment and whatnot. And that was the goal. She would tell the story of her uncle, who apparently died, okay, of cancer. And so that was a huge thing for her. That's what made her go into this, you know, vendetta to try to really stop the pricking and prevent and detect. Okay. And she was everywhere. She made a lot of money. She made a lot of money by conning people. She had the right investors in there. She was interviewed by, Bill Clinton. I think Joe Biden even sat with her at one point. So this was someone that somehow her cons worked. I think we all need to start dressing up like Steve Jobs. Right? That's right. Her own professors in the university said that it was not possible. Well, I think so. One of the professors, actually, I did read somewhere that he had left Stanford to go support her idea at some point. So that there was one specific professor that was like, that's not possible. It's the one that said that she was a high-pitched voice and suddenly she went to a baritone. So I thought that was interesting as well. But there was one that left the job to go support her dream. I don't know. But this is interesting. Interesting. I suggest that. I mean, she's a tall woman. Okay. Here she is with, you know, these big men. Do or do not. There is no try. There you go. That's right. No, Steve Jobs said the Apple computer is for crazy people. I guess you don't use Apple products then, right? You know, Steve Jobs is another character too, guys, that he wasn't the nicest guy ever. I mean, I heard a lot about Steve Jobs. Now, this is Balwani, Sunny Balwani, okay? This is the one that was said to have been her colleague / lover, okay? And they were having an affair. Okay, and a lot of people on the board did not know this. It was kind of under the wraps. I really don't know. She's now accusing this man, that's going to be her defense, of being abusive towards her. Heads up on that. This is what he looks like now. So this is going to be a very interesting take, I think. The lady is now broke. Okay. No one is supporting. There's so many lawsuits right now. If you actually just go and check what it looks like and everything, she's got a lot. She's got a lot to respond to. She could face up to 10 years. Okay. That's what we're seeing. And even then I was looking at, let's see if I can show you one more thing here. One more thing is, let's see if I can open that document. Let's see. She, the questionnaires. Okay. And let's do this. Why don't we take a little bit of a rabbit twerk break? Just before I show you this, because it's not going to be long, but at least you guys can take water, whatever you guys need to do before we come back. Wanted to show you this little document. Let's do a little rabbit twerk. That's right. Let's twerk it out for everyone. That's right. All right, let's get back to this little document. And it's not going to be very, very long, but I was able to find the questionnaire for the jurors. Okay. And I thought this was interesting because I'm like, well, what are they asking him? Like, are you a doctor? Are you, what do you have? And so they state that the prospective juror, you have been summoned by this court for jury service in a criminal case entitled United States versus Elizabeth Holmes. In the case, Elizabeth Holmes is charged with wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Okay. She was a CEO. The indictment alleges that the defendant, Sunny Balwani, was the operating chief, COO, and president, knowingly and intentionally devised a scheme or plan to defraud investors in Theranos. Okay. Which was in the blood testing business. Okay. So it gives us a little intro there. Where I wanted to go was really in the questions. And because I'm like, this is going to be very extensive. And it tells you a lot of directions. You are instructed to not discuss this case. So if anybody's ever done jury duty, you're told, hey, you can't talk about this case. It's like the itch you can't scratch. That's how it is. Okay. It's how it is. So we go down, let's go. Let's see. Matters preliminary. So they try to figure out like, hey, are you COVID positive? Of course. Is there anything that's going to prevent you from staying in the trial? Those are just kind of preliminary. You work full-time, part-time. Who are you? Let's see if we can keep it moving here. So when we get to the actual questionnaire, they want to know your life experience. Okay. I've sat in jury duties a couple times here and there, so this is kind of fairly normal, but I thought one of the questions here, it says, worked in any field that involves blood, tests, doctors, or other medical. Okay. And I wonder, is this for the prosecution? Obviously, the defense. I don't think it would be for the defense. They want to kind of know your experience. Have you worked in pharmacies? Okay. Think of Walgreens, Safeway, CVS. Received any form of medical treatment, vaccine, test, or diagnosis? Been involved in disputes or misdiagnosis of payment, medical treatment, malpractice. All right. And we keep it going. Here we go. And what are your main sources of current news? I think they're wanting to know like your login information as well, just to make sure you don't talk about the case. Do you read, listen to the following, subscribe the following individuals' blogs, podcasts? So they put all these bloggers and podcasts in the list, guys. So if you think that the government's not listening to you, they are. As crazy as that is, I started reading. I'm like, oh my God. Well, does that mean that these people have information we don't have? I don't know. Have you read, watched, listened to, or been told to follow any of the following? HBO, The Inventor. Okay, there you go. A lot of these things they don't like. I'm sure that this is the way in which to wean you out. They don't want you to be biased during their trial, right? I don't know who hasn't. I mean, I wonder how many people they had to call in for this. How familiar are you with the case? Okay. Have you heard of Miss Elizabeth Holmes? Yes, no. Do you have any familiarity with Sunny Balwani and the Theranos? Have you or anyone, your friends, been employed? So it's just very kind of like, how well do you know the case? Experience with the legal system. Okay. And we keep it going. Let's see. Have you had anybody testify? Have you ever been reported of wrongdoing to your employer or government agency? Just real, like, intense. I feel like I'm applying for a job to be a juror, and this is it's a lot. It's a lot. I know. No, I'll be on the list now. Barb said we're gonna be on the list now. I hope not. I don't know. Who knows? Probably not. I don't think so. Let's see. This is crazy. This is crazy. So I'm looking in here. As a juror, is it important for you to obtain information outside of this case? The court will instruct you that because you will receive all the evidence and legal instructions, you probably may consider to return a verdict. Do not read it, watch it, listen to it. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but this is crazy. This little, and then you have to do the juror oath. Okay. Anything else that you need to put in here, right, to explain your questions. Look at this. And attachments, attorneys, defense attorneys, possible witnesses. Look at all these witnesses, guys. And it keeps going. We're not even done. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Any names that anybody recognizes here? Because I definitely recognize some names here. This is crazy. So I'm kind of curious to know where, like, that's going to be a very costly trial. Okay. But also in general, like, over this little machine. What is it? Where is it? Here it is. Like, I don't know. Looks like a coffee maker to me at this point. I don't know. And I'm just like, well, what do you do? What happened to all the machines right now? Did they collect them as evidence? Just kind of curious. Who knows? They will keep this in court until they plead down to 18 months. You think so? Yeah, it's going to be very expensive. That's for sure. It's going to be very expensive for the jury to keep people secluded. Like, that's a lot. That is a lot. Oh my God. Yeah. So she said she would start that company over and over. Oh, that is so she. Well, I guess she doesn't feel bad about it, right? I mean, for whatever it's worth. But at the same time, I mean, I always look at, well, what can we really take from this situation? What do we get from here? Number one, don't believe everything that people say, right? Whether you look like Steve Jobs, act like Steve Jobs, or portray yourself very well like Steve Jobs. I don't care who you are, okay? There are people with ill motives and intentions. And we did reach out, just to let you guys know, I reached out to somebody that was interviewed in the HBO documentary. I don't know if they'll get back to us. It would be great to interview them here. I would love to do that. She worked for the company during the time, and I reached out to her. Let's see what happens. Okay. Let's see if she agrees to interview with us. I don't know. It'd be great though to kind of get to know what the atmosphere and environment was, because one thing I heard her say was that they started to kind of, like, when you were typing, they were trying to figure out who you were messaging internally. And there was this, like, dog eat dog world in this company to try to keep you quiet. Yeah. So, talk about abusive tactics, that's for sure. And I think Elizabeth Holmes is a good example of one. Don't believe the bullshit. Don't believe what you read. She will get out of on time. Do you really think so? She will get out on time serve. I don't know, man. 37.5 has a thing. You have a vendetta against Apple computers. Apple computers, here's to the crazy ones. That's a funny comment. I don't know, man. I don't know. Computers. That's all I got to say. Who knows if you're one too with that name? Just saying. I don't know. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to do a quick little review of it. I recommend that you guys go watch The Inventor on HBO. Again, if you do the free, what is it? If you don't have an account with them, you could do like the little free thing. Okay. And I think it's like 14 days. The documentary it's very well done. Okay. And I don't like a lot of documentaries. I do, but I don't always kind of marry, because I feel like there's just very one-sided. This one looked at different areas, and it looked at her as a person, which is what it amazes me, because, there's a lot of people that portray leadership roles and they probably shouldn't. And people will do stupid things and lie. And then you have those that will whistleblow, right, when something's going on, and thank God that they did. And then you have a journalist who called the shit out, right? So I don't know. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this quick little review of the situation. I wanted to throw that out there. I've always wanted to touch this one because it intrigued me. She kind of intrigues me a little bit. She's just a very interesting character. Anyways, I am out. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. Rabbits out.